On this episode, I dive into one of the core apps in the Google Apps for Education suite. This is Edtech Library episode number 12, Google Slides. Hello and welcome to Edtech Library. My name is Mike. It's been a very long time since the last episode, so I'm excited to be back and talking about one of my favorite apps in the Google Apps for Education suite called Google Slides. Now, in this particular episode, I'm going to look at some of the basics that Google Slides has to offer. If you've learned at some point in the past on PowerPoint, which is sort of like the Microsoft Office equivalent of Slides, the features are very, very similar, and you'll find that the learning curve between the two is pretty small, which is great. So in this episode, I'll take a look at some of those basic features, look at some of the newer features recently released by Google to make the Slides app a little bit more interactive, and then I'll close up, as I usually do, by talking about some of the useful points that this particular application has to offer and what some of the potential uses might be. So let's get started and head to the look-in.
So here we are on the look-in, and this particular video is going to be more of a basic tutorial on some of the features Google Slides has that I want to show you, and I will show you some of the new features that were recently released within the last few months by Google to increase some of the engagement pieces that you have in this presentation platform. So when you create a new Google slideshow, of course you'd go back to your Drive. When you log in a Drive, you click on New and Google Slides. It will create a new slides file for you. Now, one of the good habits that try to get into is whenever you create something new is always try to name it. So I'm just going to name this here real quick. So this is actually just going to serve as a sample, but when you open up your slideshow, what you'll see usually on the right hand side, what opens immediately is your themes. You can choose from any one of these themes or choose to leave it blank. But when I do choose a theme, actually reformat the page to fit that particular theme that they have already created for you. So each different slide will have a unique formatting, but all in the same kind of theme, so it keeps sort of a consistency from slide to slide. And so if I click on a new theme, it will change it for me. So I'm going to add my title here to this slideshow, and we'll get started looking at some of the great tools that are offered in this application. So if I want to create a new slide, and I'm going to work my way across the toolbar here. Now, as I'm working through the toolbar, you will see that some things change as I move actually into the slide and click on things like pictures or text boxes. Some of the choices along here will change. Now, many of these choices can be found also above in here too as well. File will have some different features, of course, the sharing option. It'll have some other things like emailing collaborators and printing, of course, but most of the tools you'll be using during the actual creation of your slides deck is going to be across here in the bottom. To create a new slide, I just click on the plus sign. If I click on this arrow, it's going to allow me to create a specific type of layout. So you have some different option layouts available for you, or you can go with one of their pre-made ones. I'm going to choose just a basic, let's go with the one column in text. So here you can see what's available to me. I have my title, and then I have my space down here where I can add different content. But once I have my slide created, I have my slides, you'll say I have my slide deck finished. Of course, maybe want to print this out. Clicking on print will allow me to print the slides I have. You can also print them out into handouts as well by going to File and Page Setup, or Print Settings and Preview. I can undo and redo. This feature right here, Paint Format, is actually going to allow me to have consistent formatting. So if I have a lot of text that I want to move from one slide to another, this will allow me to move text and the format that goes with it from one slide to the next very, very easily. Now, if I'm spending some time zooming out and zooming in, let's say I get zoomed in too far and I want to head back to the original view, this little zoom to fit is actually going to bring the slide back to full view for me so that I can then see the whole slide in its entirety. This selector is going to allow me to click on different things, like here we can see a text box, of course. I can add my own text boxes by clicking on this option here. If I click on the option and then click and drag, I can actually create a brand new text box, which I can type in. Now, the really nice thing I think about this particular platform is that Slides has basically it's an open palette where you have this blank slate and that you can create and add all different types of things to, and just move them around as you need. Something you can't necessarily do or can't do as easily on a Google Docs setup. So this could be something that you can really use as an advantage for different types of unique formatting. Things that you could consider using this for go well beyond presentations, and I'll talk about some of those options at the end of this episode. So going back to my other options, I have images. You can choose from your own. You can take a snapshot by URL, or you can even search the stock images that they provide you, which you can put into as well. So they also give you a disclaimer: results shown are labeled for commercial reuse with modification. So you can actually use these. They're basically copyright free. So if you're looking at teaching good digital citizenship habits, using the tool here to find stock images is really, really helpful. I have all different shapes I can add to as well. Of course, they can, once they're placed in here, let's add a little arrow, they can actually be colored too as well. So I can change the fill color on those to make them unique. This is something that's really cool if you're doing something like mind mapping. That flexible palette or this open template that you have will allow you to add these different types of tools that you can use to really customize what type of page or slide you've created. Over here we have the ability to add lines. We also have the ability to add comments. So if I want to add comment to a page, I can click on comment and then put my comment here. And when I click on comment, it'll actually show up for everybody who's a collaborator in this particular file to see those comments. Background will allow me to change the background color if I choose. I can even add an image. Of course, layout we saw before. I was changing the layout of my slide actually over here when creating a new one. But if I don't like the way that this slide's turning out, I prefer a different layout, I can just click on the layout option and it will move things around a little bit for me. You can see some of the text boxes are now overlapping each other, but it does give you that flexibility at any time you can change the way that this page is set up. Theme opens as you open slides, and one of the things that you can see here is the slides actually shows as a toolbar. I can get rid of it by clicking on the X. Last but not least, we can add transitions. Transitions can be added between slides. So here you can see the slide transition. If I wanted to have it flip when it's done, I can actually test it out. And you can see it does the little flip, and then that'll be added into when I actually present it. You'll see a flip between the different slides. Now you can apply them to all slides, or you can do each one individually. You can also add animations between different pieces, so text boxes, shapes. So if you want to show some sort of movement or some sort of logical progression from point to point, adding animations is a good way to focus on specific pieces of a slide versus the whole thing. So most of these features, as you can see on the bottom here, are things that you'd be familiar with probably in PowerPoint. A couple other features that will be a little bit different up here in the view. You can actually have the ability to view or change the view of the slide. You can add stuff like speaker notes too, which I have on the bottom. You can see them down here. These notes would appear for me, but they will not appear to those who are looking at the projection of the presentation. So it's one of those things that you can add to give yourself a little bit of a leg up. If you're having some things that you want to make sure you add in or talk about with your presentation, speaker notes are a great way to add those things in. So that's basically it for the view section. Inserting things will allow you to, there's a couple other options here. You can insert charts from sheets. You can also insert charts that you create here on this as well. Links and also videos. When you're pulling videos, you can actually do a search by YouTube, or you can add it by URL. Adding a YouTube video is very, very easy. So if I just type in my search, my options come up here, so you can see I can just add this in very quickly, and I'll just choose this one. The video appears. Now to play the video, I can double click on it, or when I actually set up the presentation and I go into present mode, you can actually see the video appears, loads, and then I can actually play it from here too, which is really, really cool. As you move into the actual text boxes, there are some other options. So here you can see as I'm on the slide itself, there are no formatting options for me to work on the actual text. But as soon as I enter a text box, you'll see all these change here. I'll go down to this text box because I wanted to go and show you a couple things that are over here in the More section. You have the ability to add fill color, line color, which would be for the outline of my text box. I can also add line dashes and different line weights. I can change the text. So I'm just going to put a couple pieces of text in here so that we can see. So if I wanted to change the text type and size, I can do that. I can also add bold, italics, underline, change the color too. So pretty basic. Inserting links, I can also insert links so you can change the way that these presentations are used into a much more engaging style with a little bit of work. Of course, adding comments, I can do that here too as well. I can also use different types of alignment, so I can align it right, I can align it middle, also left and towards the bottom too. You can add different spacing like you can in docs. And in the More section here, I also have the ability to add things like number lists and also bullet points too as well. So it's kind of a neat little feature I can add for better organization within my slide. So those are some of the basic features here. There's a couple other things that I do want to show you, but I want to make sure that we're moving on and doing this as quickly as possible. Of course, the share feature, which you'll see up here, I can share this with other people if I want to. But one of the new features I wanted to show you is actually when you present. So if I'm going to present this particular slideshow, one of the things that you'll see here, maybe it won't quite appear, hopefully it will appear, let's see. There we go. I brought it back into the view. So now you can see over here I have a pop-up options. I have a presenter view, which is going to show me the slide. It's also going to show me as well my speaker notes, which is kind of nice. And so if I click on that, you will see here the speaker notes will appear. Now, one of the new tools that's available to you in Google Slides, which wasn't available beyond a few months back, I believe it was May of last school year, they added this in, is something called the audience tools. What you can do is actually you can add the ability for audience members to contribute to or engage in your slideshow. So what happens here is if I choose to start a new presentation, this is going to allow me to give this to the audience. So this will show, and it actually is going to show above. Here you can see to ask a question, an audience member can go to this. They'll be able to see the slides themselves, and they can actually add questions. When they type these questions in, what's going to happen is, and if I go to it, I can ask a question. So if they type this question in and they hit submit, you can actually see the question come up, and people can actually vote questions. So if you're giving a presentation with a lot of audience members, they can actually answer this or respond to the questions that they think are most relevant to them. So if you're using this with your students and you only have a few minutes to answer a few questions, this might help you choose the questions that most people think are most pressing. Now, for me as a presenter, you now see the question populate the audience tools here. So this is a really, really neat feature, and if I really want to, I can actually present it, and that should bring it up for me on the slide. You can see it now. This is the question, and when I'm done, I just hit hide and it goes away. So that's one of the really cool things that you can use with Google Slides. It gives your chance to engage with your audience on a whole nother level. Of course, you might have Q&A at the end of a presentation, but sometimes people will forget questions as presentations go on and may not be willing necessarily to ask in front of a whole group like you might see in a classroom. This will give basically everybody the chance to ask questions, to have a voice, and that's one of the really, really neat add-ons that Google has just contributed to this particular application. So that's going to be it for the look-in here. Now, there are many, many other options, many other features that are really, really useful, and I will try to talk about some of the other ones that you can see across multiple platforms in future episodes. So now that you've seen some of the basic features that Google Slides has to offer, I want to close up this episode by talking about some of the possible uses you may have for this in your classroom.
So in addition to serving as a basic presentation platform, of course in Google fashion they've added some new features which continue to add different levels of engagement. As you saw in the presenter view there, we have the ability to engage our audience and give our audience voice before, where we didn't have that with the traditional or older versions of Google Slides or PowerPoint. One of the greatest things though, I think beyond that presentation piece, is that the flexibility of the formatting on Google Slides is going to give you the ability to do all sorts of things, from adding pictures, text boxes, shapes, or even video. You can create all sorts of unique different types of products, such as things like mind maps, or of course a presentation, or even an ebook. By changing something like the page setup, I can create an e-magazine with my students. It's very, very simple, very, very easy to do. So I think that flexibility is something that, as an educator, I really, really like to have available to me. And it's one of the things that hopefully you'll be able to use in your own classroom. That's going to be it for this episode. Episode 12, Google Slides. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below in the comments section. And of course, if you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Again, that's going to be it for this episode. I'm Mike, and thanks for watching.